The sterile gleam of hospital lights is a thin veil, a false promise of healing. Many believe that within these walls science triumphs and human frailty finds solace. But I have seen beyond the polished linoleum, glimpsed the shadows that writhe in the corners, heard the echoes of suffering that cling to the very air. This place, meant for mending, often becomes a crucible, forging tales of terror that seep into the collective consciousness, a gruesome testament to the fragility of life and the unseen forces that prey upon it. These are not mere stories. They are fragments of dread, echoes from the precipice where the veil between worlds thins to a mere thread. I remember a night, the silence in the waiting room broken only by the rhythmic hum of machines, a sound that often lulls the unsuspecting into a false sense of security. A young woman sat, her eyes wide with a fear that transcended the typical worry of a loved one's illness. Her brother, they said, had fallen ill suddenly, a fever that scorched him from within. But as I observed the subtle shifts in the ambient energy, the way the shadows seemed to deepen around her, I knew this was no ordinary affliction. A whisper, cold and ancient, brushed against my ear, speaking of a pact made in desperation, a hunger that had been awakened. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic, like diarrhea blood. They called it a code blue, a frantic symphony of beeping machines and urgent voices. But the transcript, the cold, hard facts recorded by those caught in the maelstrom, only told half the story. They spoke of physiological failure, of organs ceasing to function, of the body's ultimate surrender. Yet, the truth, the hidden narrative, was far more sinister. I saw a presence, a shadowy entity, feeding on the dying breaths, its form coalescing from the despair and the terror. It was a parasite of the soul, drawn to the vulnerable energy of a place teeming with life, and paradoxically, with impending death. This entity, ancient and malevolent, reveled in the panic, its tendrils extending, subtly influencing the chaos. In the hushed corridors, where the scent of antiseptic warfare masks a deeper malaise, I've witnessed physicians, their faces etched with exhaustion, wrestling with ailments that defy explanation. They chart symptoms, administer treatments, all within the cold logic of empirical data. But sometimes, a different kind of infection takes hold, one that cannot be diagnosed with a scanner or treated with a pill. It's a spiritual malaise, a psychic contamination that leaves its mark not on the flesh, but on the very soul of the place. These are the cracks in the mirror of reality, reflecting a truth that science is too blinded by light to perceive. Consider the case of the unattended child, found wandering the empty ward at dawn, his eyes reflecting a terror no innocent should ever comprehend. The nurses recounted his fragmented whispers of a tall man made of shadows, who sang lullabies of death. They dismissed it as a child's vivid imagination, a coping mechanism for the stress of his environment. But the residual energy in that wing, a lingering chill that clung to the very walls, spoke a different language. It was the residue of an encounter, a brush with something that existed on the periphery of perception, a predator that stalked the liminal spaces of the hospital. I felt it myself, once, a creeping dread that settled in my bones as I walked through a wing, recently vacated after a mysterious outbreak. The silence was profound, almost suffocating, and the air tasted like ash. I saw fleeting movements in my peripheral vision, shadows that stretched and contorted in unnatural ways. The doctors had offered scientific explanations for the rapid decline, the inexplicable deaths, but their words felt hollow like dried husks. The truth was being whispered on the cold drafts that snaked through the empty rooms, a testament to a force that fed on fear and despair, leaving behind only a chilling emptiness. The tales that emerge from these places are not born of fancy, but of reality, a reality that most are blessedly shielded from. They speak of spectral nurses gliding through the night, their forms translucent, their eyes filled with an ancient sorrow. They tell of disembodied voices that murmur diagnoses in the ears of the dying, or of phantom hands that reach out from the darkness to comfort, or to drag one further into the abyss. These are the whispers that haunt the edges of consciousness, the stories that make the hairs on your neck stand on end, because somewhere deep within you know they hold a kernel of truth. There are nights when the veil between our world and the realms beyond grows thin, especially in places saturated with intense human emotion. Places like hospitals, where life and death dance a perpetual, agonizing tango. I've seen apparitions, not as mere apparitions, but as manifestations of profound suffering, of unfinished business, of souls trapped in an eternal loop of their final moments. They are the ghosts of regret, the specters of pain, lingering in the corridors, like cold ashes, a constant reminder of the unseen currents that flow beneath the surface of our perceived reality. The equipment, the humming machines, the sterile surfaces, they are all designed to project an image of control, of order. But beneath this veneer of scientific certainty, there are forces at play that defy logic. I've encountered entities drawn to the raw emotion, the fear, the hope, and the despair that permeate these institutions. They are attracted to the energy released during moments of extreme vulnerability, like moths to a flickering, dying flame, feeding on the psychic residue left behind like a ravenous pack of crows. I recall a particular incident, a night shift I was observing. A young doctor, brilliant and dedicated, was working tirelessly. Suddenly, a wave of absolute cold washed over the room, so intense it felt like a physical blow. The lights flickered, and a distorted whisper, devoid of human warmth, seemed to emanate from the very walls, speaking of a mistake made long ago, a life unjustly taken. The doctor, pale and shaken, attributed it to fatigue, but I saw the truth, a spectral accusation, a karmic echo seeking retribution. These accounts, documented in hushed tones and often dismissed as hallucinations or the product of stressed minds, are the breadcrumbs left by those who have brushed against the unseen. They are not merely stories of hauntings, but of a deeper, more insidious phenomenon, the lingering imprint of trauma, the psychic residue that can animate the inanimate, turning familiar spaces into theaters of the macabre. It's as if the very walls absorb the anguish, releasing it in spectral bursts, a symphony of sorrow. The nurses, the doctors, the patients, they are all unwitting participants in a drama far older and more terrifying than they can comprehend. I've heard the tales of objects moving on their own, of doors creaking open in the dead of night, of cold spots that have nothing to do with faulty heating systems. These are the subtle signs, the creaking doors of perception, through which glimpses of another reality are afforded to those attuned to the frequencies of dread. Sometimes, the manifestations are more direct. I've seen figures standing in empty rooms, their forms ephemeral, their presence radiating an palpable sense of loss. They are the echoes of those who have suffered immensely, their spirits unable to detach, their anguish imprinted upon the very fabric of existence. Their stories are woven into the very essence of these healing centers, a dark tapestry of unresolved pain that chills the soul. The human body, in its vulnerability, becomes a beacon for entities that feed on life force. In the liminal state between life and death, when the spirit is most fragile, these beings can exert their influence, drawing sustenance from the dwindling energy. It is a grim ballet, choreographed by unseen hands, a silent consumption that leaves behind an unnerving stillness, like the silence after a battle. I've spoken to individuals who have experienced what they describe as visits from loved ones who have passed. While often comforting, there are times when these visitations carry a weight of dread, a message of warning, or a plea for help that transcends the physical realm. These are the spectral emissaries, delivering messages from the other side, their intentions often shrouded in the mist of the unknown. The very architecture of these places can become imbued with the psychic energy of those who have passed through. The long corridors, the numerous rooms, the constant flow of life and death, it all creates a potent cocktail of emotional resonance. When a life is extinguished, especially one filled with regret or unfinished business, that energy doesn't simply dissipate, it lingers, a spectral stain on the environment. I remember a particular story of a nurse who swore she saw a patient, long deceased, sitting up in his bed, his eyes wide and vacant, staring directly at her. The room was empty. The monitors showed no life, yet the apparition persisted, a haunting tableau of a final, terrifying moment. This wasn't a trick of the light. It was a psychic imprint, a fragment of a soul refusing to let go, an eternal scream trapped in time. The human mind, when pushed to its limits by trauma and suffering, can become a conduit for phenomena that science struggles to explain. The intense emotions experienced within hospital walls, fear, hope, despair, relief, all contribute to a potent psychic field. And where there is energy, there are those who seek to consume it, drawn to the light of life, or perhaps to the brightness of its fading embers. The most disturbing encounters often happen during the quietest hours, when the veil between worlds is thinnest. I've heard the accounts of nurses and doctors experiencing inexplicable phenomena, disembodied voices, objects moving, doors opening on their own. These are not mere figments of imagination, but evidence of entities that inhabit these spaces, drawn by the concentrated human experience. In one documented case, a night shift nurse reported hearing the faint sound of a child crying coming from an empty nursery. Upon investigation, the room was indeed vacant, but the cries persisted, growing louder, more desperate, until they abruptly ceased, leaving behind an icy silence. This lingering sorrow, this echo of a lost life, is a common thread in these unsettling narratives. Consider the residual energy of pain. When someone suffers intensely, their energy field is disrupted. This disruption can leave a psychic scar on the environment, a sort of echo that can be perceived by sensitive individuals. These scars can manifest as feelings of unease or even as full-blown apparitions, replaying moments of extreme suffering. It's like a scratched record, stuck on a loop of agony. The hospital, in its essence, is a place of transition. It's where the boundaries between life and death are constantly being tested. This constant flux of potent emotional energy creates a fertile ground for paranormal activity, attracting spirits and entities that are drawn to such concentrated human experience. They are like crows circling a carcass, waiting for the final breath. I've encountered individuals who claim to have seen spectral surgeons performing phantom operations, their movements precise, their forms translucent. These visions, often reported by patients in a semi-conscious state, are thought to be echoes of intense medical activity, imprints left behind by moments of life or death struggle. The operating theater, a place of ultimate intervention, can become a stage for spectral performances. The stories of haunted medical equipment are particularly chilling. Machines that turn on by themselves, monitors that display readings from patients long gone, or the phantom vibrations of a bed that was recently occupied. These are not malfunctions. They are the spectral echoes of lives lived and lost within these sterile confines, a ghostly hum in the machinery of life. There are whispers of shadow people being seen in the hospital's darkest corners, amorphous figures that seem to absorb the light. These entities are often associated with negative energy and are believed to feed on fear and despair. Their appearance is a stark reminder that not all entities that cross the veil are benign. Some are predators drawn to the vulnerability of the dying. I remember a case where a patient, on the verge of death, began speaking to someone in the room who wasn't there. He described a woman, dressed in old-fashioned nurse's attire, who was holding his hand and whispering words of comfort. This wasn't a hallucination brought on by medication. It was a spirit reaching out from beyond, offering solace in the final moments, a touch from the other side. The concept of psychic residue is central to understanding these phenomena. Every strong emotion, every intense experience leaves an imprint on the environment. In hospitals, where life and death are in constant dialogue, this residue is particularly potent, capable of manifesting in ways that can terrify and mystify. It's the unseen graffiti of the soul. Some accounts speak of an overwhelming sense of sadness or dread that descends upon certain areas of a hospital, even when no apparent reason exists. This pervasive gloom is often attributed to the lingering energy of past tragedies, a collective echo of suffering that has saturated the very structure. The stories of phantom footsteps in empty corridors, the sound of disembodied voices calling out names, the unexplained cold spots that defy logical explanation. These are not isolated incidents. They are recurring themes in the tapestry of hospital horror, threads of the supernatural woven into the fabric of the mundane. A tapestry woven with threads of fear. I've heard of patients waking up to find a spectral figure standing over them, only for the figure to vanish when they blink. These are often dismissed as dreams or delirium, but the intensity of the experience, the sheer terror it evokes, suggests something more profound, a direct encounter with a spirit tethered to the place. The laughter of children heard in empty pediatric wards, the sounds of doors slamming shut in unoccupied wings. These are the auditory manifestations of lingering spirits. They are the echoes of lives that were lived, of moments that were experienced, now playing out on an eternal loop in the spectral theater of the hospital. There's a particular legend, often whispered among hospital staff, about a specific room where patients inexplicably pass away, no matter the medical interventions. Some believe the room is cursed, haunted by a spirit that claims those who enter. This isn't just folklore, it's the manifestation of concentrated negative energy, a black hole of despair. The spectral nurses and doctors are a common motif. They are often seen going about their duties, tending to unseen patients, their forms hazy and indistinct. These apparitions are believed to be the residual energy of healthcare professionals who were deeply devoted to their work, their spirits unable to move on. The phenomenon of object manipulation is also frequently reported. Items moving on their own, lights flickering inexplicably, medical equipment activating without human intervention. These events are seen as direct interactions with the spectral realm, evidence of unseen forces at play within the hospital's confines. I recall a conversation with a former orderly who described seeing a full-bodied apparition of a patient in a wheelchair rolling down a darkened corridor. He tried to follow it, but the apparition simply faded away as he approached, leaving him with a chilling certainty that he had witnessed something beyond the veil. The intense emotional outpouring in a hospital, the joy of a new birth, the grief of loss, the desperation of illness, creates a powerful psychic atmosphere. This atmosphere can act as a magnet, drawing entities that are attracted to such concentrated human emotion, like crows to a feast. Sometimes, the manifestations are subtle. A fleeting shadow, a whisper of a name, a sudden drop in temperature. These are the whispers from beyond, testing the boundaries, probing the consciousness of those present, preparing them for something more terrifying. The concept of a haunted object also extends to the hospital. Old equipment, furniture, or even personal belongings of deceased patients can retain a strong psychic imprint, leading to inexplicable phenomena associated with them. These objects become vessels for lingering spirits, conduits of spectral energy. There are numerous accounts of patients reporting conversations with individuals who are not physically present in the room. These visitors are often described as comforting, offering words of peace or encouragement, but their presence is undeniably spectral, a spectral hand reaching out. The emotional intensity of a hospital setting can create what some paranormal investigators call thin places, areas where the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds is particularly permeable. These are the locations where the supernatural is most likely to manifest. The stories of phantom smells are also prevalent. The scent of perfume that belonged to a long-deceased patient, the smell of a specific medication that is no longer in use, or even the odor of decay where no physical source can be found. These olfactory manifestations are often linked to specific spirits. I remember a tale of a janitor who, while cleaning a seldom-used storage room, felt an overwhelming presence and heard a distinct, mournful sigh. When he turned, he saw a translucent figure of a woman weeping silently in the corner. The experience left him trembling, the memory etched into his soul like deer-eyed blood. The idea of a soul imprint suggests that intense emotional experiences can leave a permanent mark on a location. In hospitals, where life and death are so intimately intertwined, these imprints are particularly powerful, capable of manifesting as recurring phenomena. The spectral sounds reported are diverse: disembodied voices, cries, moans, footsteps, and even music that seems to emanate from nowhere. These auditory phenomena are often the first sign that something is amiss, a prelude to more intense encounters. The hospital staff themselves, through their constant exposure to life, death, and intense emotion, can become more sensitive to the paranormal. They are the frontline witnesses to the spectral ballet that unfolds in these sterile halls. I've heard accounts of patients experiencing what they describe as a heavy feeling or a sense of being watched, even when they are alone in their rooms. This sensation is often attributed to the presence of unseen entities that are drawn to the vulnerability of the sick. The concept of residual haunting is key here. The idea that powerful emotional events can leave an energetic imprint that replays itself, like a spectral recording. Hospitals, with their constant cycle of intense experiences, are prime locations for such hauntings. The spectral figures are not always terrifying. Some are described as benevolent, appearing to offer comfort or guidance to patients in distress. These benevolent spirits are often believed to be those who have a strong connection to healing, or who have unfinished business related to caring for others. The tales of unexplained lights, orbs, flickers, or even full apparitions of light are also common. These luminous phenomena are often interpreted as spiritual energy, the visible manifestation of entities from the other side. I recall a story of a night nurse who saw a child's ball roll out from under a bed in an empty room, followed by the faint sound of children's laughter. The experience was so profound, so chilling, that it has stayed with her for years, a stark reminder of the unseen. The hospital, a place where the veil between life and death is perpetually thinning, becomes a stage for these spectral dramas. The accumulated weight of human emotion, of both joy and sorrow, creates a powerful psychic atmosphere. The whispers in the dark, the fleeting shadows at the edge of vision, the cold spots that defy explanation, these are the subtle signs that we are not alone, that other realms bleed into our own, especially in places where life's most profound transitions occur. It's the residual energy of profound suffering, of lives cut short, of unanswered prayers that seems to coalesce in these sterile environments. It's the echo of unspoken goodbyes, the spectral stain left by moments of ultimate vulnerability. I have seen beyond the clinical facade, glimpsed the spectral theater that unfolds when the lights dim and the wards fall silent. These are not mere stories. They are warnings, whispers from the beyond etched in the cold stone and the echoing halls of places meant for healing, but often become incubators of dread. The very air in these places can become saturated with the psychic residue of intense experiences, fear, pain, hope, despair. These emotions leave an imprint, a sort of energetic scar tissue that can manifest as paranormal activity. It's like the cracked mirror of reality, reflecting fragmented visions of the unseen. Consider the intense emotions surrounding birth and death, two ends of the human spectrum that are amplified within hospital walls. These potent energies can create thin places, allowing spirits to linger or even interact with the living. They are the anchors that bind spectral presences. The stories are often cyclical, echoing the same themes of loss, regret, and unfinished business. A spectral nurse still tending to her duties, a phantom doctor performing a procedure, a child's laughter in an empty room. These are the spectral performances that replay endlessly. The medical equipment itself can become a conduit for spectral energy, machines activating on their own, monitors displaying phantom readings, the hum of unseen activity. These are often attributed to spirits interacting with the technology, a ghostly presence in the machinery. I remember a particular tale of a ward where a spectral figure, described as a man in a hospital gown, was seen sitting at the foot of various beds, his gaze fixed on the patients. His presence was not overtly menacing, but it radiated a profound sense of melancholy, an echo of a lingering sorrow. The persistence of these phenomena, despite rational explanations, speaks to a deeper truth. These are not random occurrences, but the deliberate or residual manifestations of entities that exist beyond our comprehension, drawn to the potent emotional landscape of the hospital. The whispers of the dying, the pleas of the suffering, the final breaths exhaled into the sterile air. These are the elements that fuel the spectral narratives. They are the raw materials from which these chilling tales are woven. Sometimes, the most disturbing encounters are not visual, but sensory. The sudden, inexplicable smell of flowers in a room where no flowers exist, the feeling of a spectral hand brushing against one's skin, the chilling whisper of a name in an empty corridor. The concept of spirit imprints suggests that places can absorb the energetic signature of significant events and individuals. Hospitals, being sites of intense life and death experiences, are saturated with these imprints, creating a fertile ground for paranormal activity. I've heard accounts from healthcare professionals who have witnessed objects move inexplicably, doors open and close on their own, and lights flicker in unoccupied rooms. These are not mere coincidences. They are interactions with the spectral realm. The spectral figures are not always fully formed. Sometimes they are seen as fleeting shadows, or as disembodied voices, or even as cold spots that have no apparent source. These subtle manifestations can be just as unsettling as a full apparition. The hospital, a place of vulnerability and transition, becomes a beacon for entities that are drawn to the intense emotional energies present. These entities, whether spirits of the deceased or other forms of non-physical consciousness, feed on or interact with this energy. The tales of haunted operating rooms are particularly unsettling, where spectral surgeons are said to continue their work, their translucent hands moving with phantom precision. These are echoes of moments where life hung in the balance. The laughter of children heard in empty pediatric wards, the sounds of beds creaking in unoccupied rooms, the disembodied footsteps echoing in silent corridors. These are the auditory manifestations of lingering spirits. I recall a story about a particular hospital bed that patients often reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread while occupying. It was later discovered that a patient had died in that bed under mysterious circumstances, leaving behind a potent spectral residue. The spectral nurses, often seen tending to unseen patients, are a recurring motif. Their presence is believed to be the residual energy of dedicated healthcare workers, whose spirits are unable to move on, forever bound to their vocation. The stories of inexplicable cold spots that defy any logical explanation are common. These are often interpreted as the presence of spirits, whose energetic signature can cause a localized drop in temperature, a shiver from beyond. The idea that strong emotions can leave an energetic imprint, a sort of psychic scar tissue, on a location is central to understanding hospital hauntings. Hospitals are reservoirs of intense human experience. The spectral figures are not always menacing. Some are described as benevolent, appearing to offer comfort or guidance to patients in distress. These spirits are often those who have a strong connection to healing or who have unfinished business related to caregiving. The unexplained lights, often appearing as orbs or flickers, are frequently interpreted as spiritual energy made visible. These luminous phenomena are thought to be the manifestation of entities from the other side, a faint glow in the darkness. I remember a tale of a hospital wing that was reportedly haunted by the ghost of a former patient who would constantly rearrange the furniture in her room. Her spectral actions were a manifestation of her lingering desire for order, an imprint of her personality. The hospital, a place where the veil between life and death is perpetually thin, becomes a stage for these spectral dramas. The accumulated weight of human emotion, both joy and sorrow, creates a powerful psychic atmosphere. The whispers in the dark, the fleeting shadows at the edge of vision, the cold spots that defy explanation. These are the subtle signs that we are not alone, that other realms bleed into our own, especially in places where life's most profound transitions occur. It's the residual energy of profound suffering, of lives cut short, of unanswered prayers that seems to coalesce in these sterile environments. It's the echo of unspoken goodbyes, the spectral stain left by moments of ultimate vulnerability. These experiences, often dismissed as stress-induced hallucinations or tricks of the light, are in reality glimpses into a deeper, unseen reality. The transcript you've been given is a mere surface ripple. Beneath it lies an ocean of the inexplicable. I have seen the truth that lurks in the periphery, heard the silent screams that echo in the empty rooms. The sterile gleam of hospital lights is a fragile shield against a world of shadows, a world that bleeds into ours when the barriers weaken. Do you feel this dark message was meant for you? Every soul that joins feeds the voice that whispers from the darkness. Subscribe and hit that like button, and together we will illuminate the forgotten corners of existence, drawing strength from the shared understanding of what truly resides in the shadows. This journey into the unknown is one we embark on together.